The phone rang just as I was adding the final touches to homemade apple pie. I wiped my flour-dusted hands on my apron and reached for it, smiling when I saw Philip's name on the screen. My son always had impeccable timing, calling right when I was thinking about him. "Hello, dear," I said, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder as I slid the pie into the oven. "Hey, Mom," he replied, his voice carrying that slightly strained quality I'd come to recognize over the years, the tone that meant he was about to disappoint me, but hoped I wouldn't notice. "I'm just putting the finishing touches on everything for tonight," I said, glancing at the dining room table I'd spent all morning setting. Crystal glasses that had belonged to my mother, the good china I only used for special occasions, and fresh flowers from my garden, orange lilies, Philip's favorite since childhood. There was a pause on the line, followed by a practiced sigh. "About tonight, Mom. Victoria isn't feeling well. Something with her sinuses, might be a cold coming on. We're going to have to reschedule." I looked at the table set for 5, me, Philip, Victoria, and my grandchildren Lily and Ethan. A small celebration for my 75th birthday. Nothing extravagant, just family time. The kind that had become increasingly rare these days. "Oh," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm sorry to hear that. Poor Victoria. Is she resting?" "Yeah, she's resting," Philip said quickly. "The kids are a bit disappointed too, but we'll do it next week, I promise. Maybe even somewhere special instead of at your place. Make it up to you." I adjusted a fork on the table, aligning it perfectly with the knife beside it. "Of course, dear. Health comes first. Tell Victoria I hope she feels better soon." "Will do, Mom. Love you." The call ended before I could respond. I set the phone down and looked at my kitchen counter, where a half-finished birthday cake sat waiting for its final layer of frosting. The words "Happy 75th, Martha" were already piped in blue icing on top. I turned off the oven. There was no point in baking a pie for just myself. As I slowly removed the place settings, I tried not to feel the weight of disappointment pressing down on my shoulders. It wasn't the first time plans had changed at the last minute. Philip was busy with his architectural firm, Victoria had her real estate career, and the children had their activities. I understood. Life was hectic. I was just putting away the last wine glass when my phone chimed with a notification. My banking app alerted me to a transaction, $340, at the Harbor House restaurant. I frowned, tapping to see the details. I hadn't been to the Harbor House in months. Not since I'd taken Philip and his family there for his birthday back in March. A mistake, surely. I'd call the bank in the morning to sort it out. I put my phone away and settled into my armchair with a cup of tea and the mystery novel I'd been reading. The house felt especially quiet tonight. After a few chapters, my phone chimed again, another alert from the same restaurant, this time for 68 more. 2 charges in one evening? That couldn't be right. I opened my banking app again and stared at the screen, puzzled. The transactions were both pending on my credit card, just hours apart. It struck me then, the Harbor House was where Philip had proposed to Victoria 12 years ago. They sometimes went there for anniversaries and special occasions. But why would charges from that restaurant be showing up on my credit card tonight of all nights? Unless, the thought came unbidden, unwelcome. I dismissed it immediately. There had to be a logical explanation. Perhaps my card information had been stolen. Yes, that must be it. Credit card fraud. I'd call the bank's fraud department right away. But as I reached for the phone, another thought stopped me. I remembered lending my credit card to Victoria 3 months ago when she'd forgotten hers at a gas station. I'd told her to keep it as a backup, just in case. Family helps family, I'd said. Without quite deciding to, I found myself changing out of my house slippers and into proper shoes. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door. It was just a 10-minute drive to the Harbor House, just to check, just to be sure before I reported anything to the bank. The restaurant was bustling when I pulled into the parking lot. Through the large windows, I could see couples and families enjoying their Friday evening meals under the warm lighting. I sat in my car for a moment, feeling foolish. What was I doing here? What did I expect to find? But I'd come this far. I got out and walked slowly to the entrance, telling myself I would just peek inside and then leave. No one even needed to know I was here. The hostess smiled at me. "Good evening, ma'am. Just one tonight?" "No, I faltered, then recovered. "I think I left my reading glasses here earlier. I was wondering if anyone turned them in." She checked a small drawer at her station. "I'm sorry, we don't have any glasses in Lost and Found right now. Would you like me to check with the manager?" "No, that's all right. I probably left them somewhere else." I smiled apologetically. "While I'm here, could I just use your restroom?" She nodded, gesturing toward the back of the restaurant. "Of course, down the hall to your left." I thanked her and made my way through the dining area, my eyes scanning the tables as naturally as I could manage. And then I saw them. In a corner booth with a view of the bay sat Philip, Victoria, and my grandchildren. Lily was reaching for a dinner roll with both hands. Ethan was showing something on his phone to his father. Victoria was laughing, her head thrown back, looking anything but sick. A bottle of wine, an expensive Cabernet that I recognized because I'd introduced Philip to it years ago, stood open on the table. My knees weakened, and I steadied myself against a nearby chair. A waiter approached them with dessert menus. Philip said something that made everyone laugh. Victoria reached into her purse and withdrew a sleek black credit card, handing it to the waiter without even checking the bill. My credit card. I turned away before they could see me, my face burning with a mixture of embarrassment and hurt. As I walked quickly toward the exit, my mind raced with questions. Why lie about being sick? Why use my credit card for their dinner? Had they deliberately excluded me from my own birthday celebration? Outside in the cool evening air, I leaned against my car and took several deep breaths. I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me, not peace, but the stillness that comes with clarity. I'd seen enough. I wouldn't confront them here, not now. That wasn't my way. I drove home in silence, no radio, no tears. Just the sound of my own breathing and the occasional passing car. When I arrived home, I sat in my driveway for a long moment before going inside. The house I'd once shared with my late husband, Howard, seemed to welcome me back with its familiar creaks and shadows. In my study, I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out my credit card statements from the past 6 months. As a retired accountant, I'd kept meticulous records all my life, a habit Howard had sometimes teased me about. "Not everything needs to be documented, Martha," he'd say with a smile, but tonight I was grateful for my thoroughness. I spread the statements on my desk and began to go through them line by line, highlighter in hand. There they were, dozens of transactions I didn't recognize, restaurants, clothing stores, online purchases, a weekend at a spa in Vermont, concert tickets, Even airline tickets to Florida during the children's spring break, a trip they'd told me was a gift from Victoria's parents. As the highlighted items accumulated, a pattern emerged. Small charges at first, things I might not notice, then larger ones spaced apart. Always on days when I was busy with my volunteer work at the library or my gardening club meetings, they knew my schedule. They knew when I wouldn't be checking my accounts. I added up the total, $13,457 over 6 months. Not enough to bankrupt me, but a substantial sum. Money I'd been saving for a trip to Europe I'd always dreamed of taking. The most painful part wasn't the money. It was the deception. The careful planning that must have gone into using my card without my knowledge. The family dinners where they'd smiled and accepted my homemade meals while secretly spending my money elsewhere. I thought about confronting them immediately, calling Philip and demanding an explanation, but something stopped me. A lifetime of being the understanding mother, the supportive parent who never made waves, had taught me patience. This required a different approach. I needed time to think, to plan, to decide what kind of grandmother and mother I wanted to be for whatever years I had left. I closed the statements and put them in a new folder. On its tab, I wrote a single word, betrayed. Then I went to bed, though sleep was long in coming. Morning brought no magic solutions, but it did bring clarity. As I moved through my usual Saturday routine, watering my houseplants, making coffee, reading the newspaper, I felt different, lighter somehow, as if seeing the truth, painful as it was, had removed a weight I hadn't known I was carrying. I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood, hoping the fresh air would help me think. The spring day was perfect, sunshine filtering through newly leafed trees, birds calling to each other, gardens beginning to show their early blooms. I waved to Mrs. Peterson, who was weeding her front yard, and stopped to chat with the new family on the corner who were setting up a bicycle for their daughter. As I turned onto Maple Street, I saw Harriet Wilson struggling with several grocery bags as she tried to unlock her front door. Harriet was in her 60s, a retired nurse who had moved to the neighborhood after her husband died 2 years ago. Her adult daughter Grace visited often with her young son. "Let me help you with those," I called, hurrying over to take 2 of the heavier bags. "Martha, you're a lifesaver," Harriet said, finally getting her door open. "I always think I can carry everything in one trip." I followed her into her kitchen, placing the bags on the counter. I do the same thing. Howard used to tell me I was too stubborn for my own good. Harriet laughed. "That sounds familiar. James would say I had the stubbornness of 3 mules." She began unpacking the groceries. "Would you like to stay for some tea? Grace dropped off some lemon cookies yesterday that are absolutely divine." I hesitated only briefly. "I'd love to." As we sat at her kitchen table with steaming mugs and cookies that were indeed divine, Harriet told me about her volunteer work at the Children's Hospital and her book club adventures. I found myself talking about my garden plans and my weekly chess games at the senior center. Not once did she ask why I wasn't spending Saturday with my family, and not once did I feel the need to explain. "You know," Harriet said as I was leaving, "Grace and Tommy are coming over tomorrow for Sunday dinner. Nothing fancy, just pot roast and potatoes. You're welcome to join us if you'd like." The invitation took me by surprise. "I wouldn't want to intrude on your family time." Harriet waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense. Grace always makes too much food, and Tommy's been asking about the lady with the magic flowers. Apparently your garden has made quite an impression on him." I smiled, remembering the curly-haired 5-year-old who had stopped to ask about my roses last month. In that case, I'd be delighted. Can I bring anything? Just yourself, she said, then paused. And maybe some of those dinner rolls you mentioned. They sound wonderful. Walking home, I felt a sense of purpose taking shape. The hurt remained, of course. That wouldn't disappear overnight. But alongside it grew something else. Resolve. I had decisions to make, and for once they would be based not on what my family expected of me, but on what I needed for myself. When I got home, I went straight to my office and pulled out a legal pad. At the top, I wrote, "Next steps." Then I began to list what needed to be done. First, call the credit card company to report unauthorized use. Second, make an appointment with my attorney, Harold Finch, to update my will. Third, gather all evidence of the unauthorized charges. Fourth, decide how and when to confront Philip and Victoria. By the time I finished my list, the afternoon sun was streaming through the window, illuminating the dust motes in the air. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in Howard's old chair, the one I'd never been able to part with after he died 7 years ago. "What would you do, Howard?" I asked aloud, running my fingers along the worn armrest. He had always been the pragmatic one, the one who could see solutions where I saw only problems. In my mind, I could almost hear his response, "You already know what to do, Martha. You're just afraid to do it." He was right, of course. I knew exactly what needed to be done. I just needed the courage to do it. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Philip. For a moment, I considered not answering, but then I picked up, curious about what new lies I might hear. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice cheerful. "How are you feeling today?" I almost laughed at the irony of him asking me that question. "I'm fine, thank you. How is Victoria feeling?" "Better, I hope." There was the slightest pause. "Oh, much better. Those 24-hour bugs can be nasty, but she's on the mend. Listen, we were thinking about next weekend for your birthday dinner. How does Saturday sound?" I kept my voice neutral. "Actually, I've made other plans for next weekend. I'm having dinner with a friend on Sunday." Now the pause was longer. "A friend? Harriet Wilson, from down the street? And her daughter and grandson? I didn't know you were friends with the Wilsons." I smiled to myself. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Philip." Before he could respond, I added, "I need to go now. I have some important calls to make. Give my love to Victoria and the children." I hung up feeling oddly exhilarated. It was a small thing, but it felt like the first step in reclaiming my life. As I picked up my legal pad again, I noticed my hands were steady. The hurt was still there, but now it was fuel for action rather than a weight holding me down. My first call was to the credit card company. I reported the unauthorized use without naming Philip and Victoria, saying only that my card had been used without my permission. The representative was sympathetic and efficient, canceling the card immediately and starting the process to issue me a new one. She explained that I could dispute the charges, but I would need to file a police report for any charges I wanted refunded. A police report would mean officially accusing Philip and Victoria of theft. Was I ready to take that step? I decided to put that decision aside for now. There were other matters to attend to first. Next, I called Harold Finch's office and scheduled an appointment for Monday morning. Harold had been our family attorney for decades, handling everything from Howard's will to the purchase of our home. He knew our family history, which would make this conversation easier and harder at the same time. As the day wore on, I continued gathering evidence, printing out bank statements and highlighting suspicious charges. I created a spreadsheet showing dates, amounts, and locations. The accountant in me took a certain satisfaction in the orderly rows and columns, even as the mother in me ached at what they represented. That night, I slept better than I had in months. There was something liberating about finally seeing the truth, painful as it was. As I drifted off, I found myself thinking not about Philip and Victoria, but about the dinner rolls I would make for Harriet and her family tomorrow. Sunday passed pleasantly with Harriet, Grace, and little Tommy. The pot roast was delicious, the conversation easy, and Tommy's delight at my honey-glazed dinner rolls was worth every minute spent kneading the dough. Not once did I check my phone or wonder what my own family was doing. For a few hours, I simply enjoyed the company of people who seemed genuinely happy to have me there. Monday morning found me sitting in Harold Finch's office, my folder of evidence on my lap and a determination I hadn't felt in years burning in my chest. Harold, with his shock of white hair and wire-rimmed glasses, listened without interruption as I explained the situation. I want to change my will, I concluded, and I want to do it in a way that can't be contested later. Harold leaned back in his chair, studying me over the rims of his glasses. This is quite a serious step, Martha. Are you absolutely certain? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He nodded slowly. All right, let's talk about your options. For the next hour, we discussed the details. Currently, my will left everything to Philip, with provisions for my grandchildren's education. My estate wasn't enormous, but it was substantial. The house, which was fully paid for, my retirement accounts, some investments, and the life insurance policy Howard had left me, all told, well over $1 million. Harold explained that while I could change my will as I saw fit, Philip might have grounds to contest it if I cut him out entirely with no explanation. We needed to be strategic. I don't want to leave them nothing, I said. They're still my family, despite everything. But I want them to understand that actions have consequences. In the end, we decided on a 3-part approach. First, I would leave a modest sum to Philip, enough to be meaningful but far less than he would have received under the original will. Second, I would set up trust funds for Lily and Ethan that would mature when they turned 25, with conditions attached regarding their education and community service. And third, I would donate a significant portion to the local education foundation that provided scholarships for underprivileged children, a cause Howard and I had always supported. As Harold made notes, I hesitated, then added, "There's one more thing. I'd like to leave something to Harriet Wilson and her daughter Grace. They've shown me more genuine kindness in the past 2 days than my own family has in months." Harold looked up, surprised. "That's unusual, but certainly doable. What did you have in mind?" "The lake house," I said, without hesitation. The small cabin on Lake Champlain had been Howard's pride and joy, a weekend retreat we'd visited regularly until his death. Philip had taken his family there occasionally in the years since, but not often. They preferred more exotic vacations. "Are you sure, Martha? That property has been in your family for generations." "I'm sure. Harriet's daughter is a single mother struggling to give her son opportunities she never had. That house could change their lives, and Howard would approve. He always said a house should be filled with laughter." Harold nodded, making a final note. "I'll have all the documents prepared for your review by the end of the week. Once you've signed everything, I can file the necessary paperwork." As I left his office, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The decisions I'd made were painful but necessary. Now came the hardest part, confronting Philip and Victoria. I decided to wait until the new will was signed and filed before having that conversation. In the meantime, I would continue gathering evidence and building a new life for myself, one that didn't revolve around waiting for my family to include me. Over the next few days, I threw myself into activities I'd neglected. I rejoined my book club, signed up for a watercolor class at the community center, and spent hours in my garden preparing for summer blooms. I had lunch with Harriet twice and accepted an invitation to Tommy's preschool art show, where his painting of a dragon butterfly earned pride of place on my refrigerator. Each night, I added to my file of evidence documenting every unauthorized charge I could find. The total had now grown to over $17,000 when I included transactions from older statements. There were patterns within patterns, charges at high-end department stores just before holidays, restaurants on days when Victoria had told me they were just having a quiet night at home, online purchases from luxury brands I would never have thought to question. By Friday, Harold had the documents ready. I read through each page carefully before signing. As I watched him file the papers away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Whatever happened next, I had taken back control of my legacy. "When do you plan to tell them?" Harold asked as he walked me to the door. "This weekend," I replied. "I think it's time for a family dinner, don't you?" He squeezed my hand. "Call me if you need anything, day or night." I nodded, grateful for his support. On the drive home, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would remain calm and dignified even in the face of what would surely be shock, denial, and perhaps anger. I wouldn't yell or accuse. I would simply present the facts and explain the consequences. When I arrived home, I called Philip. "I'd like to have you all over for dinner tomorrow," I said when he answered, "to make up for my missed birthday celebration." "Tomorrow?" He sounded surprised. "Let me check with Victoria." I could hear muffled voices as he covered the phone to consult with her. A moment later, he was back. "That should work. What time?" 6 o'clock. "And Philip? Please don't cancel this time. It's important to me." There was a pause. "Of course, Mom. We'll be there." I spent Saturday morning preparing. Not the food. I had decided to order takeout from Philip's favorite Italian restaurant instead of cooking. But my presentation, I organized my evidence, made copies of key documents, and rehearsed what I would say. I wanted to be firm but fair, clear but not cruel. At 5:30, I set the dining room table with the same care I had taken for my birthday dinner that never happened. The good china, the crystal glasses, fresh flowers. This time, however, I added a folder at each place setting, copies of my evidence, tailored to each family member. Philip's included all the financial documents. Victoria's highlighted the specific charges she had made. Even Lily and Ethan, at 13 and 10, received simplified versions explaining how their actions had hurt me. When the doorbell rang at 6 sharp, I took a deep breath and smoothed down my dress. A new one I had bought specifically for this occasion, navy blue with a subtle pattern, elegant but not showy. I wanted to look my best for what would likely be one of the most difficult evenings of my life. "Grandma!" Ethan launched himself at me as soon as I opened the door, wrapping his arms around my waist. Lily offered a more restrained hug, already showing signs of teenage reserve. Philip kissed my cheek, and Victoria handed me a bouquet of store-bought lilies. "Happy belated birthday, Martha," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you," I replied, accepting the flowers. "Please come in, dinner will be here shortly." As they filed into the dining room, I noticed Philip's eyes widen slightly at the folders on the table. "What's all this, Mom? Are you redecorating or something?" I gestured for them to take their seats. "Let's wait until the food arrives. Then we can discuss everything." The food came 15 minutes later: lasagna, garlic bread, and Caesar salad from Antonio's. I served everyone, poured water into the crystal glasses, and finally took my seat at the head of the table. "Before we eat," I said, "I'd like you all to open your folders." Victoria and Philip exchanged glances, but they complied, as did the children. For a moment there was only the sound of papers rustling, then Victoria's sharp intake of breath, Philip's muttered curse, Lily's confused, "Mom, what's this?" I waited until they had all had a chance to skim the contents before speaking. As you can see, I've become aware that my credit card has been used without my permission for quite some time. Nearly $17,000 worth of unauthorized charges over the past year. Victoria's face flushed. "Martha, I can explain." I held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. This isn't just about the money. It's about the deception, the lies, the deliberate choice to exclude me from family events while using my money to fund them. Like my birthday dinner last week at the Harbor House, the one you all attended after telling me Victoria was too sick for us to celebrate together." Philip's face had gone pale. "You were there? At the restaurant?" "I was. I saw you all laughing, enjoying yourselves. I saw Victoria pay with my credit card." I turned to the children. "Lily, Ethan, I want you to understand that I'm not angry with you. You didn't know, but I want you to see how hurt I am by what's happened." Ethan's lower lip trembled. "We had cake, Grandma. They said you couldn't come because you were sick." A fresh wave of pain washed over me. So they had lied to the children as well. "Martha," Victoria began again, her voice tight, "you've always been so generous. We just assumed." "You assumed I wouldn't notice," I finished for her, "or that I wouldn't mind. But taking someone's money without asking isn't borrowing, Victoria. It's stealing." Philip slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses jump. "That's enough. How dare you accuse us like this? After everything we've done for you?" I looked at my son, really looked at him, and wondered when he had become this stranger. "What exactly have you done for me, Philip? Cancel plans at the last minute? Lie about where you're going and what you're doing? Use my credit card without permission?" "We were going to pay you back," Victoria interjected, her voice softer now, placating. "It just got a little out of hand." "A little?" I pushed Philip's folder closer to him. The last page shows the total. "Nearly $17,000 is not a little, Victoria." Lily, who had been silent until now, looked up from her folder. "You bought those shoes with Grandma's money? The ones you said were a special deal?" Victoria flushed deeper. "Lily, this is an adult conversation. Why don't you and Ethan go watch TV in the living room?" "No," I said firmly. "They should stay. They need to understand that actions have consequences." I turned to my grandchildren, which brings me to the next part of our discussion. I explained about the changes to my will, keeping the details simple but making it clear that their trust funds would now have conditions, and that a significant portion of my estate would go to charity. I did not mention Harriet and the lake house. That would only add fuel to the fire at this point. Philip's face grew increasingly red as I spoke. When I finished, he stood up so abruptly his chair nearly toppled backward. "This is extortion. You're punishing us for a few misunderstandings by threatening our inheritance?" "It's not a threat, Philip. It's done. The papers were filed yesterday." Victoria reached for my hand across the table. "Martha, please, we made a mistake. We can fix this. We'll pay back every cent." "Yes, you will," I agreed. "I've prepared a repayment plan." I pulled another document from my own folder. "Monthly payments of $500 until the debt is cleared. I think that's fair, don't you?" Philip was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. "This is insane. You're over-reacting to a simple misunderstanding." "Is that what you call lying to me about my own birthday dinner? A misunderstanding?" He stopped pacing and glared at me. "You know what? Keep your money, keep your house, keep all of it. We don't need your charity." "Philip," Victoria hissed, looking horrified. I remained calm, though my heart was racing. This isn't about charity, it's about respect. It's about honesty. It's about treating me like a person with feelings, not just a bank account you can draw from whenever you please. Ethan was crying quietly now, and Lily had her arms crossed tightly over her chest, staring at the table. The family dinner I had envisioned, difficult but ultimately healing, was disintegrating before my eyes. "I think," I said softly, "that it might be best if you all went home now. We can discuss the repayment plan another time when everyone is calmer." Victoria stood up, gathering her purse and the children's jackets. "Come on, kids, let's go." Philip remained frozen for a moment, staring at me as if I were a stranger. "Is this really what you want, Mom? To tear apart our family over money?" I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not the one who tore apart our family, Philip. You and Victoria did that when you decided that lying to me and stealing from me was acceptable. I'm just acknowledging what's already happened." They left without another word, the children casting confused glances back at me as Victoria hurried them out the door. When it closed behind them, the house fell into a silence so profound I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I sat alone at the dining room table, surrounded by untouched food and damning evidence, and wondered if I had just lost my son forever. The thought brought tears to my eyes, but I didn't regret what I had done. Some truths needed to be spoken, no matter how painful. As I began clearing the table, my phone rang. It was Harriet. "I just wanted to check in," she said. "See how you're doing after our little adventure at the art show today." I had almost forgotten. We had taken Tommy to a children's art festival at the park that morning. It seemed like a lifetime ago now. "I'm okay," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "It's been a challenging evening, but I'm okay. Want to talk about it? I've got a fresh pot of tea and those shortbread cookies you like." I glanced at the half-cleared table, the evidence of a family confrontation that had gone even worse than I had feared. "Actually," I said, "that sounds perfect." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Harriet's cozy living room, a cup of tea warming my hands, recounting the evening's events. She listened without interruption, her face showing concern but not judgment. "You did what you had to do," she said when I finished. "It took courage. Did it? Or was it just pride? Philip thinks I'm tearing apart the family over money." Harriet shook her head firmly. "This isn't about money, and you know it. It's about respect. It's about honesty. It's about being treated like a person with value beyond what you can provide financially." Her words, so close to what I had told Philip, brought fresh tears to my eyes. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me. The real question, Harriet said gently, is whether you can forgive him. And if so, under what conditions? You've taken the first step by speaking your truth. Now the ball is in his court. I nodded, taking a sip of tea. I suppose you're right. I just never imagined at 75 that I'd be essentially starting over, building a new life without my son and his family at the center of it. Starting over isn't a bad thing, Harriet said with a small smile. Look at me, widowed at 63, moved to a new town, made new friends. It's never too late to create the life you want, Martha. As I drove home later that evening, her words echoed in my mind. It's never too late to create the life you want. Perhaps that was the silver lining in all of this. The opportunity to discover who Martha Winters could be when she wasn't defined primarily as Philip's mother or Howard's widow. The house was dark when I arrived, save for the porch light I'd left on. As I unlocked a door, I felt a strange sense of possibility mingling with the lingering sadness. Whatever happened with Philip and his family, whether they eventually came to understand my actions or not, I would be okay. I had friends, I had interests, I had a life worth living on my own terms. And for tonight, that was enough. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended state. Philip didn't call, and neither did Victoria. I received one tearful call from Ethan, asking if I was still his grandma, which broke my heart. I assured him that nothing would ever change that. I would always be his grandmother, and I would always love him. I sent both children cards with personal notes, making it clear that my issues were with their parents, not with them. I threw myself into creating a new routine. Morning walks with Harriet, volunteer hours at the library, watercolor classes on Wednesdays, Sunday dinners with Harriet, Grace, and Tommy. I even joined a senior travel group planning a trip to the Finger Lakes in July. Harold called to let me know that the final paperwork had been filed for my will changes. "Have you heard from Philip?" he asked. "Not a word," I replied. "I'm giving him space to process everything." That's wise. These things take time. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, as I was sorting through old photographs for a scrapbooking project, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Victoria stood on my porch, her hair damp from the rain, her expression unreadable. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice subdued. I stepped aside, letting her enter. She followed me to the living room where we sat in awkward silence for a moment. "Philip doesn't know I'm here," she finally said. "He's still processing everything." "I understand," I replied, though part of me wanted to say that processing shouldn't take 2 weeks of complete silence. Victoria twisted her wedding ring nervously. "I came to apologize. What I did was wrong. There's no excuse for it." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is the first payment, $500, as you requested." I took the envelope, surprised that she had actually brought money. "Thank you." "It's not just about the money," she continued, her eyes downcast. "The way we treated you was inexcusable. Using your credit card was bad enough, but lying to you about your own birthday," she shook her head. "I don't know how we let things get so out of hand." I sat quietly, allowing her to speak without interruption. Part of me had expected defensiveness or more excuses, not this apparent contrition. "The children miss you terribly," she added. "Especially Ethan. He keeps asking when we can come see you again." "They're welcome here any time," I said firmly. "My issue was never with them." Victoria nodded. "I know, but Philip, She trailed off, then seemed to gather her courage. He's stubborn, proud. He feels humiliated by what happened at dinner, the way you laid everything out so methodically. The truth is often uncomfortable, I replied, keeping my voice gentle despite the defensive words. What did he expect me to do? Continue pretending I didn't know? No, of course not. Victoria sighed. I think he expected you to yell, to be emotional, that he could calm you down, make promises, and everything would go back to normal. Your calm approach threw him off balance, made it real in a way he wasn't prepared for. I considered this. Perhaps she was right. Philip had always been able to talk his way out of trouble with me. From the time he was a little boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar, my methodical, businesslike approach had denied him that familiar pattern. What happens now? I asked. Victoria looked up, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. That depends on you, I suppose. I've told Philip he needs to apologize to make this right. He's not there yet, but he will be. In the meantime, I was hoping maybe the children and I could visit sometimes, start rebuilding what we broke. I felt a surge of emotion, relief, hope, cautious optimism. I would like that very much. As Victoria was leaving, she paused at the door. There's one more thing you should know. We've canceled all the credit cards that weren't in our names, and we're seeing a financial counselor to get our spending under control. What happened with you, it was a wake-up call we needed. After she left, I sat in my living room, turning the envelope over in my hands. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Philip's absence was a glaring hole in the reconciliation, but it was a start, a foundation to build upon. That night, I added a note to my ever-growing file. Victoria's first payment, $500, but this time I labeled the folder Healing instead of Betrayed. The next day, I received a text from Philip, the first contact since the disastrous dinner. It was brief. Mom, I'm sorry. I need more time, but I love you. 7 simple words that carried the weight of possibility. I texted back just as simply, I love you too. Take the time you need. As spring gave way to summer, a new rhythm established itself in my life. Victoria brought the children over every other weekend. At first, these visits were awkward, stilted, but gradually they became more natural. Lily helped me in the garden, showing an unexpected interest in my roses. Ethan and I played chess, his young mind picking up strategies with remarkable speed. Philip remained distant, though he no longer actively avoided me. At drop-offs and pickups, he would wait in the car, offering a wave but not coming inside. It hurt, but I understood he was still working through his feelings, shame, resentment, perhaps even grief for the uncomplicated relationship we once had. In July, I went on the trip to the Finger Lakes with the senior travel group. 5 days of wineries, boat tours, and evening conversations on the hotel patio. I shared a room with Harriet, and we stayed up late talking like college girls, sharing stories and dreams I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge in years. I'm thinking of selling the house, I confided one night as we sat overlooking Seneca Lake, glasses of local Riesling in hand. It's too big for just me, and there are too many memories. Harriet looked surprised. Where would you go? I'm not sure yet. Somewhere smaller, more manageable, maybe closer to you and Grace. I hadn't realized I was considering this until the words left my mouth, but once spoken, they felt right. When I returned home, refreshed and clear-headed, I found a letter in my mailbox, handwritten on proper stationery, not an email or text. It was from Philip. "Dear Mom," it began, "I've been trying to write this letter for weeks, starting over and over, because nothing seems adequate. How do you apologize for betraying the trust of the person who has always been your biggest supporter? I'm not sure, but I have to try." The letter continued for 3 pages, a heartfelt and painful accounting of his shame, his struggle to face what he had done, and his desire to make amends. He explained that financial pressures at work had led to the initial borrowing, which then snowballed as he and Victoria tried to maintain an image of success they couldn't afford. "None of this excuses what we did," he wrote. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, at least not yet. I haven't earned it. But I am asking for a chance to try, to show you that the son you raised still exists somewhere beneath the man who disappointed you so terribly." He ended with an invitation, dinner, just the 2 of us, at a modest local diner of my choosing. No fancy restaurants, no pretense, just honest conversation between mother and son. I called him immediately and suggested Wednesday evening at Mabel's, a home-style diner that had been serving comfort food in our town since before Philip was born. He agreed, sounding relieved and nervous in equal measure. Wednesday came, and I arrived at Mabel's 10 minutes early, choosing a booth near the back where we could talk privately. When Philip walked in, I was struck by how tired he looked. There were new lines around his eyes, and his normally perfect hair was slightly disheveled. "Mom," he said, sliding into the booth across from me, "thank you for coming." "Of course," I replied. "Thank you for the letter. It meant a lot." We ordered meatloaf for him, chicken pot pie for me, just as we had so many times over the years, and then fell into an awkward silence. There was so much to say that finding a starting point seemed impossible. Finally, Philip spoke. "I don't know how to fix this." The simple honesty of his statement touched me. "I'm not sure it needs fixing so much as rebuilding," I said, "brick by brick, with a better foundation this time." He nodded. "Victoria told me she's been bringing the kids over, that you've been doing gardening with Lily?" "Yes, she has quite a talent for it. And Ethan's becoming quite the chess player." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "He keeps trying to teach me, but I'm hopeless." "Your father was the same way," I said, the memory warming me. He could never quite grasp the strategy. We talked about safe topics through the meal, the children, the neighborhood, my trip to the Finger Lakes. As we finished our coffee and considered dessert, Philip finally broached the subject we'd been dancing around. "I'm seeing someone," he said, "a therapist, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I thought it was okay to treat you that way." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you for doing that." "Don't be proud yet," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "I've only had 3 sessions, but it's helping, making me see patterns I didn't recognize before." He hesitated. "Dad was always so good with money, so responsible. I think part of me has been rebelling against that, trying to prove I could live differently." "Your father would be the first to tell you that you don't have to be him," I said gently. "He would have wanted you to find your own path." Philip's eyes grew moist. "I know. I just wish—" He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. "Anyway, Victoria and I are working on a budget, cutting back, trying to live within our means for once." "That's good, Philip. Really good. And we're keeping up with the payments to you. You should have received the second one last week." I nodded. "I did, thank you. It's going to take a while to pay it all back, but we will. Every penny." "I know you will." As we parted in the parking lot, Philip hesitated, then stepped forward to hug me, a real hug, not the perfunctory embrace he'd been offering for years. "I miss you, Mom," he whispered. "I miss you too," I replied, holding him tight, "but I'm right here. I always have been." In the car, I allowed myself a moment of quiet tears, not of sadness, but of cautious hope. The relationship might never be the same, but perhaps it could be something new, something honest. The summer continued its leisurely pace. My watercolor class culminated in a small exhibition at the community center, where my painting of Howard's Lake House earned unexpected praise. Victoria kept her word about the bi-weekly visits, and occasionally Philip would join them, still awkward but trying. We celebrated Ethan's 11th birthday with a chess-themed party in my backyard, complete with a cake shaped like a knight. In August, I made a decision. I would sell my house and move to a smaller place, not because I needed the money, but because I was ready for a fresh start. I found a charming 2-bedroom cottage just 3 streets over from Harriet, with a small but sunny garden and a screened porch perfect for summer evenings. When I told Philip my plans, he was surprised but supportive. "Are you sure, Mom? That house has so many memories." "That's precisely why I'm moving," I explained. "I want to create new memories, not just live among the old ones." He helped me sort through decades of accumulated possessions, a process both painful and liberating. We laughed over forgotten treasures, shared tears over rediscovered photographs, and sometimes just sat in comfortable silence as we worked. During one such afternoon, as we sorted through Howard's old desk, Philip found a letter my husband had written to him on his 18th birthday, a letter I didn't know existed. He read it silently, his expression shifting from curiosity to something deeper. "Dad knew me better than I knew myself," he said finally, handing me the letter. I read Howard's words, wise, loving, prescient in their understanding of our son's strengths and challenges. "He always said you had a generous heart," I commented. "That's never changed, Philip. You just lost your way for a while." He nodded, eyes distant. "I think I was trying so hard to give Victoria and the kids everything I thought they deserved. The best schools, the best vacations, the best experiences, that I lost sight of what really matters, what they actually needed, which is stability, honesty, values that don't revolve around appearances or possessions." He met my gaze. "All the things you and Dad tried to teach me." It was a moment of genuine insight, one that gave me hope that the changes he was making weren't just temporary responses to being caught, but the beginning of real growth. The house sold quickly, for more than I had expected. As moving day approached, I invited everyone for one last family dinner in the old dining room, Philip, Victoria, and the children, but also Harriet, Grace, and Tommy. It was time for my old life and new life to converge. The dinner was initially awkward. 2 groups of people with little in common beyond their connection to me. But Tommy's exuberance proved infectious, breaking the ice as he showed Ethan his collection of toy dinosaurs. Lily and Grace discovered a shared interest in photography. Harriet and Victoria exchanged recipes. And Philip, after an initial reserve, found himself drawn into a lively discussion about local hiking trails with Grace, who was an avid outdoors woman. Watching them all interact, I felt a profound sense of rightness. These were the people who mattered to me now, some bound by blood, others by choice, all by genuine care. After dessert, as everyone helped clear the table, I slipped away to Howard's study, soon to be someone else's room in someone else's home. I ran my fingers along his desk, the bookshelves he had built, the chair where he had sat reading every evening. "I'm starting over, Howard," I whispered, "at 75. Can you believe it?" I could almost hear his chuckle, feel his hand on my shoulder. "About time, Martha," he would have said. "About time." Philip found me there a few minutes later. "Everything okay, Mom?" I smiled, wiping away a stray tear. "Better than okay. I was just saying goodbye to your father and to this chapter of my life." He looked around the room, his expression softening. "I miss him." "So do I. Every day. But he would have loved seeing you with your children tonight. The way you listen to them now, really listen." Philip nodded. "I'm trying to be more present, more honest. With them, with Victoria, with myself." He hesitated. "With you, I know you are, and I'm proud of you for that." We rejoined the others in the living room, where Tommy was regaling everyone with a story about a farg he had found in his backyard, complete with dramatic sound effects that had Ethan in stitches. Victoria caught my eye across the room and mouthed, "Thank you," her expression genuinely warm. Later, as everyone was preparing to leave, Harriet pulled me aside. "I haven't told you yet," she said, her voice low. "Grace and I have been talking about your offer with the lake house. We're overwhelmed, Martha. It's too generous." "Nonsense," I replied. "That house needs a family. It needs laughter and muddy footprints and someone who will appreciate the sunrise over the water. But it's your family home." I looked around at the gathering, Philip helping Tommy with his jacket, Victoria and Grace exchanging phone numbers, Lily showing Ethan a photo on her phone that made them both laugh. "My family has expanded," I said simply, "and so has my home." Moving day came the following week. Philip and Victoria arrived early to help, along with Harriet and Grace. As the movers loaded the last of the furniture into the truck, I stood in the empty living room, saying a silent goodbye to the house that had sheltered so many years of my life. "Ready, Mom?" Philip asked from the doorway. I took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." My new cottage welcomed me with sunlight streaming through east-facing windows and the scent of the roses Harriet had planted as a housewarming gift. It was smaller, simpler, but it felt right, a space that was truly mine, unburdened by decades of complicated history. That evening, sitting on my new screened porch with a cup of tea, I reflected on the journey of the past few months, from betrayal to confrontation to tentative healing, from isolation to community, from being defined by my past to creating my future. The phone rang. It was Philip, checking to make sure I was settling in okay. We chatted easily about practical matters. Was the heating working properly? Had I found the local grocery store? Did I need anything from their house? As we were about to hang up, he said, "Mom, I just want you to know what you did standing up for yourself like that. It taught me something important about respect, about honesty, about the kind of person, the kind of father I want to be." After we said our goodbyes, I sat watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. My new neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime played a gentle melody in the evening breeze. At 75, I had discovered something powerful, that it's never too late to demand respect, rebuild relationships on healthier foundations, to create a life that reflects your true worth. The journey hadn't been easy, and it wasn't over yet. There would be more difficult conversations, more adjustments, more lessons to learn on all sides. But for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. not just existing as someone's mother or someone's widow, but living as Martha, a woman with her own dreams, her own boundaries, and her own indomitable spirit. As darkness fell, I switched on the porch light, not the antique lamp Howard had restored decades ago, but a simple, elegant fixture I had chosen myself. Its warm glow spilled out into the garden, illuminating the path forward, one step at a time,